The extension wasn't a reprieve, it was a trap. July 9th was supposed to be the reckoning day, when Trump's tariffs up to 40% would slam into dozens of countries. But instead of pulling the trigger, Trump did something far more strategic. He extended the deadline. Now, August 1st is the new red line. But don't mistake this for generosity. This is not mercy. It's a warning shot with a ticking clock. 14 countries, from Japan and South Korea to Thailand, Cambodia and South Africa, just got a final notice. They now face tariffs ranging from 25 to 40%. And the message is brutal in its simplicity. Negotiate or get punished. This isn't diplomacy. This is an economic battlefield. So who's got the leverage now and who's about to be shut out? On the surface, it might seem like just another tariff threat from Donald Trump. But look closer, and this is a calculated, high-stakes maneuver that could reshape America's trade relationships for years. Back in April, Trump announced a sweeping tariff plan targeting countries he says are benefiting from America's open markets while keeping their own markets restricted. He called it a reciprocal tariff system, a way to force other countries to match the treatment they give US exports. The initial deadline to reach deals was July 9th. Now, with just hours to spare, he's granted a final extension, pushing that deadline to August 1st at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time. It's not a reset, it's a trapdoor with a ticking clock. Under this plan, 14 countries have been officially notified that if they don't reach individual trade agreements with the US by that date, they will face heavy tariffs. Here's the breakdown. 25% tariffs on Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Kazakhstan and Tunisia. 30% on South Africa and Bosnia. 32% on Indonesia. 35% on Bangladesh and Serbia. 36% on Thailand and Cambodia. 40% on Laos and Myanmar. These aren't symbolic penalties. These are punishing rates designed to shock the system, to force a reaction and to break long-standing trade patterns. And the threat is real. These letters weren't sent through press conferences. They were delivered directly to embassies, with signatures and deadlines. So far, only 3 countries have secured exemptions or struck deals: the United Kingdom, Vietnam, and most interestingly, China, which has reportedly agreed to partial concessions, buying time and avoiding immediate retaliation. That leaves 11 other countries facing a critical choice. Some are scrambling to send trade delegations to Washington. Others are still weighing their political options, risking massive losses if they miscalculate. Markets are already responding. The S&P 500 dipped nearly 1% following the announcement. The dollar wavered as investors priced in potential disruptions. And logistics networks, especially in Southeast Asia, have already seen companies suspend or reroute shipments, fearing what could come next. But beyond the headlines, the message is unmistakable. The US is no longer playing defense on trade, it's swinging first. And for the countries caught in the middle, this isn't just about policy, it's about survival. Their industries, their exports, their labor markets all now hinge on the outcome of a 3-week countdown. Let's be very clear, this August 1st extension is not a favor, it's a tactic. Trump didn't delay these tariffs to ease tensions. He delayed them to apply more pressure, to force foreign governments into a corner, with just enough time left to panic and act. This is classic Trump strategy. Draw a red line, let people get close to it, then widen the spotlight and say, last chance. But the policy itself, it's grounded in something bigger than campaign posturing. Since day one of his return to office, Trump has been consistent about one thing: rebalancing America's trade relationships. In his words, too many countries take from the US but give nothing back. That means tariffs on our goods, subsidies for their own industries, and protected markets that US companies can't get into. So this reciprocal tariff move, it's less about economic punishment and more about restructuring global trade rules, one country at a time. And by turning it into a deadline, Trump now has unilateral leverage. Each country has to negotiate directly with the US. Urgency on his side. 3 weeks isn't enough time for protests or coalitions to form. A binary choice. Either you reach a deal or your exports become 25 to 40% more expensive overnight. That's not policy. That's negotiation warfare. And here's the catch. This doesn't go through Congress. These are executive orders, tools any sitting president can use under existing trade law. Trump's not rewriting legislation. He's exploiting the system that already exists. That's what makes this so effective and so dangerous. He's essentially saying if you want to be in the US market, you play by US terms. That includes opening your markets, dropping protectionist policies, or relocating manufacturing to the US entirely. It's a bold move. Some call it reckless, others call it long overdue. But either way, the result is the same. America is no longer waiting for the World Trade Organization. It's setting its own terms. And if you don't like the deal, you don't get access to the customer base. Over the next few weeks, we'll find out just how many countries are willing to call that bluff and how many fold. The tariffs may be aimed at foreign governments, but make no mistake, the pressure falls squarely on businesses, workers, and entire industries. Let's break it down by region and by exposure. Group 1. The heavyweights with options. Countries like Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia have large, diversified economies. Their exports to the US are important, but not existential. And more importantly, they have sophisticated trade teams already in Washington, working overtime to strike last-minute deals. For them, this is a negotiation they were prepared for. There's pain if they fail, but they're not cornered. Group 2. The middle powers on thin ice. Then there are countries like Indonesia, Thailand, and Cambodia. This is where the risk gets serious. Thailand exported over $50 billion worth of goods to the US in 2024. A 36% tariff could wipe out entire sectors like auto parts, electronics, and food processing. Indonesia faces a 32% tariff on everything from footwear to textiles, two of its largest export categories. Cambodia, one of the most vulnerable, sends more than 30% of its garment exports to the US. If tariffs hit, thousands of factory jobs could disappear overnight. These are countries deeply tied into low-margin manufacturing, where a few percentage points on import costs can determine life or death for contracts. If tariffs go into effect, they don't just lose competitiveness, they lose access. And in a post-COVID world where supply chains are already fragile, a tariff wall this high could force global buyers to shift production to Mexico, to Vietnam, to anywhere with a better trade deal. Group 3. The fragile fringe. And then there's the group that may not survive the impact at all. Bangladesh, Laos, Myanmar, Bosnia, Serbia. Myanmar and Laos, hit with 40%, are already under intense scrutiny from US human rights watchdogs and face political instability. Bangladesh has long depended on garment exports to survive. A 35% tariff may be the final blow to an industry still recovering from inflation and supply chain bottlenecks. They don't have the negotiating power, they don't have the diplomatic capital, and they're too small to matter politically to Washington. So what happens? Likely, they get cut off. Buyers pivot, jobs vanish, supply chains reroute. And the irony is, most of these countries weren't even on Washington's radar 6 months ago. But now they're at the center of a trade war they didn't start and may not survive. Meanwhile, the ones who cut deals early, like Vietnam, are suddenly looking like safe havens. Orders from the US are quietly shifting to these cleared countries. Warehouses are moving, logistics routes are redrawn. Because when a tariff of 36% looms over your shipment, every CEO has one question: where else can I go? And right now that question is reshaping the map of global trade in real time. Behind every tariff percentage point is a factory floor. Behind every executive order, a worker holding their breath. And right now, from Phnom Penh to Jakarta, from Bangkok to Dhaka, that breath is getting harder to hold. Let's start in Cambodia, where the garment industry employs over 800,000 people, many of them women, earning just enough to support families. One factory manager near Phnom Penh told Nikkei Asia, "We were planning to open a new line this fall. That's cancelled. Every buyer from the US is calling, not to place new orders, but to ask, what's your plan B if the tariff hits?" In Thailand, a mid-sized electronics supplier in Chonburi province received a notice from a major US client. No new orders until after August 1st. If the tariff goes through, we'll be moving to Vietnam. That's not politics. That's a pink slip waiting to happen. In Bangladesh, workers are already feeling the ripple. A union rep at a textile plant outside Dhaka said this: "This isn't a war our people chose. We just sew the shirts. But now we're told we may lose our jobs because our country didn't cut a deal." Even in wealthier nations like South Korea and Japan, urgency is building, not out of fear, but out of frustration. A senior Korean trade official speaking anonymously to Reuters said, "We're being forced to the table with a gun to our head, but there's no choice. If the US follows through, the disruption will be global." The sentiment is echoed quietly across ministries and embassies. Some call it economic blackmail, others call it a wake-up call, but no one's shrugging it off. And in the US, some importers are already making calls to their legal teams and freight companies. They know what's coming if deals don't happen. Consumer prices could spike, orders will stall, inventory will pile up or disappear. One American apparel buyer based in Los Angeles put it bluntly, "I don't care about the politics. I just need product. If Cambodia's off the list, we're calling Pakistan. If Indonesia's out, we go to India. Tariffs don't stop trade, they just move it." In the end, that's the hidden truth of this moment. The tariffs are not just numbers, they're signals. Signals that say, your country matters or it doesn't. And in a world where trade equals livelihood, those signals hit harder than any speech ever could. Let's step back for a moment. If you line up the 14 countries facing Trump's tariffs, something becomes clear. And it has little to do with trade balances or aluminum quotas. Most of the harshest penalties aren't hitting America's biggest rivals. They're hitting small to mid-sized economies, many of which share a common trait. They've grown closer to China. Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, all three are key Belt and Road Initiative RAI partners. Thailand and Indonesia have absorbed massive Chinese investment in ports, rail, and manufacturing over the past decade. Bangladesh signed on to several Chinese-backed energy and infrastructure deals. So what if these tariffs aren't just about correcting trade imbalances? What if they're about redrawing the map? Think about it. If you pressure Cambodia, you weaken China's textile foothold. If you cut Indonesia's access, you destabilize a regional supply chain Beijing has quietly dominated. If you force Thailand to shift production to Vietnam, you strengthen a US partner while isolating a fence-sitter. In other words, Trump's trade war may not be with any one country. It may be with a system, a network of nations that have allowed Beijing to become the factory of the world. And this is where things get deeper. Because this isn't just about punishing bad actors, it's about rewarding loyalty, creating division, forcing alignment. By August 1st, the world won't just know who agreed to a better tariff rate. They'll know who stood with the US and who hesitated. This is how you build a new trade order, not with treaties, but with pressure. It's not the WTO. It's not multilateralism. It's raw, bilateral leverage, backed by the threat of economic exclusion. And here's the twist. You don't need to fire a single shot. You just need to make businesses afraid to wait. So now we face the countdown. August 1st is no longer just a deadline, it's a test of allegiance, of strategy, of survival. Some countries will bend, others will try to buy time. A few might try to call Trump's bluff. But one thing is certain. After August 1st, the global trade map will look different. And maybe that's the point. Maybe these tariffs aren't designed to change products, they're designed to change positions. So the question becomes, in Trump's new economic world order, who gets invited to the table and who gets locked outside the gates? This has been Observer Malik. Thanks for listening and stay sharp. The global chessboard is moving faster than ever.